Welcome to the Human Nature Channel. I'm your host, Alex Tamsula, and what am I doing here? Well, it's Tuesday night once again here at my dad's nutsy, boltsy farm garage. You got your nuts, you got your bolts, and sometimes they even thread. You don't see that too often anymore, but life is full of surprises. I came across this little item here, and I do mean little. I think this is called a U-bolt clamp. You got your threaded U-bolt, you got your clamp, you got your little nuts on the threads. Nutsy boltsy. I got a wing nut. Next time somebody calls you a wing nut because of your association with the venerated Las Vegas shooting truth community, you tell them, there's more of us than there are you, motherfucker. I got a roller skate key, which doesn't do me a damn bit of good because I don't have a pair of roller skates. You know, I just had an idea. So, if you like nutsy boltsy, you'd enjoy it up here. A friend of mine, who I mentioned in my last video, has been up here and has enjoyed himself immensely. I didn't name him, but let's call him the cleanup man. And a month ago, the cleanup man came down with a bad case of pneumonia that put him in the hospital. While he was in there, the doctors discovered that he had lung cancer. Now, if there's any good news out of this, it's that they found it early. But still, he's looking at losing maybe half a lung, an entire lung, being in the ICU for 30 days, probably right as the coronavirus is cresting. There's a website for Coin World. I went over there because I got an email, and there was a headline that said, Chinese officials are disinfecting their banknotes. I'm like, you mean you can get this off a $1 bill? Ah. The cleanup man is a very good friend of mine. My dad likes him. This weighed on me. Last week I didn't do a video. It was nice to temporarily step back from the deadline treadmill that a YouTube channel can be. I not only got a chance to think about some Las Vegas shooting related items, but also to absorb what's going to be happening to my friend, the loss he's going to be looking at. Just preparing myself to be there for him. The good news, I would say, is that his attitude is very, very good. He's determined to fight this. The goal is to eventually go back to work. So, here is to the cleanup man. Speaking of going back to work, it's nice to be doing a video again. I don't see you guys simply as my subscribers or my viewers. I look at you as my biker gang. I thought that the other day and I says, you know what, that's a good fit. What's going on in the Las Vegas shooting truth community? It's like two outlaw motorcycle clubs having at each other in the parking lot of a bar. And I'm like, yeah. What I wanted was a hunk of chain so that I could wave it above my head like some 60s biker movie with Jack Smith, like Hell's Angels on wheels. And you would think that in a farm garage, somewhere, even upstairs, you'd find a hunk of chain, hunk of towing chain, you know, something nice and big and nasty looking. Closest I came was something that looks like, I don't know, like a dog chain. And I don't think any self-respecting biker would wade into a brawl with a dog chain. Because all the other bikers would stop fighting and start laughing, and nothing would be resolved. Just like life. So we shall segue into some Las Vegas Shooting Truth Community yak, because that's what you're here for. And I would just like to say that it is good to see that Hunter UK is back from his absence. I like his point of view. I like his expertise. Saturday he had a live chat. I believe it was his first. It was a howling success. And I did come in late, and later I listened to like the first 5 minutes that I missed, but no, there's a reason it didn't turn into a biker brawl. He basically said, and that was nice. Now, here's what I like about Hunter. He is somebody who has insider knowledge of a particular field. He has expertise. He understands the SOS systems that are inside hotels, that ping the doors when they're open and closed and all that sort of stuff. But this is fascinating. He opens a window on that side of it that I wouldn't understand. Had a lot of interesting things to talk about. On the 25th of September, when Paddock is checking in, he gets off the elevator, and there's this gap of 18 minutes before the lock interrogation report says Paddock reached his room and got inside. In fact, even in the spreadsheet it says one or more events may have been lost. And Hunter UK is incredulous at this. He's never seen anything like this before. I find this fascinating. I like insider knowledge. I like the language of the expert. So, yes, very, very good. And he has wondered if Stephen Paddock may have been under surveillance. I says to myself. In earlier videos, I wondered if Paddock could have been an informant to some agency, which would have put him under a type of surveillance. Now, let's forget that. Let's just dial that back to what Hunter is saying. Paddock under surveillance. One thing that for some reason isn't more important than it is that Stephen Paddock was a criminal. And he was a criminal because he had child porn on his computer. If he'd ever gotten arrested and did time and ever got out, he would be a registered sex offender. He was a bad guy. He was a scumbag. Now, I don't know a great deal about how guys like Paddock would acquire material like this. I guess it involves the dark web somehow. But he had it. He had it in his laptop. He was transporting it from Mesquite to Las Vegas. It's quite possible he picked up a tail. So I find it very, very intriguing and very believable that Stephen Paddock was under surveillance. What Hunter has suggested and what I've been sort of thinking are kind of parallel. And I'm all fired up. I mean, the opportunities for discussion are amazing. Anyway, there's always something interesting in my dad's garage. What can I show you tonight? What we have here is the Farm Garage Entertainment Center. We got a stereo receiver up here. When was the last time you saw one of them? We got a little flat screen TV. We've got a CD, DVD player right here. We even got a cassette tape deck. We're living large at the farm garage. Well, I think I have everything I need. I've got a used golf ball. I accidentally knocked some stuff over and this golf ball rolled across the floor. I've got a used golf ball. I have 2 carved wooden cats. When you raid the china closet with the last of the knickknacks and you pull out the 2 carved wooden cats, you're getting near the end. Alrighty, this is interesting. We have a glazed ceramic woman's boot. Couldn't tell you what size. I think it was a vase for flowers. I wonder if there's another one somewhere. Now this is interesting. What we have here is a very small kerosene lamp, and where the kerosene would go is like a little teapot. Can you imagine the power going out in your house and this being all you had? Not quite useless, but almost. Alrighty, we have this jar, which I believe would be for powdered bath soap. I just think it looks cool. That's all. And finally, we have Irv. Irv, I need to tell you something. Over at Hunter UK's live chat, some of the people there said complimentary things about Laura Loomer. I bit my tongue just like this. What's that, Irv? Smart move, he says. All right, Irv. Time for your close-up. My archaeology of Stephen Paddock continues. And first, we're going to talk about something we've all heard more times than we can count, which is Stephen Paddock sent Mary Lou Danley to the Philippines. Now, my question is, when did Mary Lou leave for the Philippines? I haven't been able to pinpoint a date yet. I'm sure somebody knows. According to Wikipedia, it was 2 weeks before the shooting. So in my attempt to identify a point of no return for Stephen Paddock, I would say by the time he sent Mary Lou off, his plan was a go. Clearly, he didn't want her around for what was coming next. The next thing that gives me no peace about the Las Vegas shooting is that I come to a point in Paddock's story where I can't be sure which of 2 possibilities is correct. One is that Stephen Paddock was the sole perpetrator of the shooting. The other is that he was a participant, even if by participant I mean only one other person. In an earlier LVS video, I talked about picturing a set of scales, where one trays for details that weigh heavier for the sole perpetrator view and the other for Paddock as a participant. It has to be one or the other. In a comment exchange I had with Secret Safe with You, I said there is a really strong case to be made for Paddock as the lone perpetrator. There is no indication he received help from anyone. Paddock made all the decisions that led up to the Route 91 Harvest Festival massacre. He bought the guns. He booked the rooms. He did internet searches with something in mind. And some of those internet search items were downright creepy. like Family Courts and Services Center and Discovery Children's Museum. Others, like the Mob Museum, are real head-scratchers. But there was also one search for how to remove a hard drive from his brand of laptop, which became a big part of the story later. Paddock didn't need anybody else. He was a do-it-yourselfer in the worst sense imaginable. Now, if that was all there is to the Las Vegas shooting, if there was a smooth glide path to Paddock's guilt with nothing unexplained, I would accept that and probably be doing videos on other subjects by now. I don't have a pet hypothesis that I'm going to throw all my resources towards. People who do that are dragging around some kind of agenda. One of my criticisms of Laura Loomer, and I think it is a legitimate criticism, is she brought her anti-Islam, anti-Sharia agenda with her to the LVS, and every piece of information presented to her had to go through that filter and get squeezed out the other end like some Play-Doh fun factory. I'm sorry, but that's backwards thinking. But I also have another problem, and that is I know about the hidden power of the unseen. Paddock's path to the shooting is not smooth, but actually jagged by things still hidden from view. This is kind of analogous to a construction company with a corrupt owner who builds buildings by cutting corners. The average person might look at a building and not know the foundation is shit. It would take a building inspector who knows what to look for. Hints of the unseen, like in shitty foundations, go into the participant tray. In earlier videos, I've talked about the news stories concerning Paddock and the call girls. Even more seriously, I talked about the child porn on one of his laptop computers. Stephen Paddock, as a consumer of this material, was a despicable human being and open to arrest at any time. Brother Bruce was himself arrested on charges of possessing child porn, an investigation that was underway before the Las Vegas shooting of October 1st, 2017. That means the name Paddock as it related to child porn was already out there. But what got me interested today is the second laptop computer with the missing hard drive. The closest we get to knowing what might have been on that laptop comes from Brother Eric Paddock, who speculated it was financial records indicating some form of tax evasion, which Eric thought would have caused him and his mother problems. From this missing and presumably destroyed hard drive, we get the observation from Eric that maybe Steve cared about us after all. But look at what Eric is really saying. He's saying he thinks Steve kept two sets of books, one for the IRS and one about what was really going on with the Paddock finances. With the child porn in his possession, we've already established Stephen Paddock was a bad actor. With the missing hard drive, we're left wondering just how deep into the shadows did he go. I don't know. But in some ways, Stephen Paddock is nothing but shadows. As I began reading news articles on Paddock, one thing I found curious was how the media picked up Paddock's life story only after the point where he was a retired accountant getting into real estate and subsequently gambling. We hear from people who were his neighbors and business associates from various places and times. But even though we get the occasional story about Steve in his younger days from Eric or ex-brother-in-law Scott Brunohler, we don't hear from people who knew Paddock when he was a letter carrier, or from people who knew him when he worked for the IRS. These were civil service jobs, by the way, meaning Stephen Paddock worked for the government. And we don't hear from anybody who knew Steve when he worked as an accountant for the company that would eventually become Lockheed Martin. We don't hear about him receiving any kind of a pension. When it comes to Stephen Paddock, all I keep finding are lots and lots of blank spots. It's so much different from the stories about the Kennedy assassination, with Oswald surrounded by bad dudes like George DeMorenshields, Clay Shaw, ex-FBI agent Guy Bannister, David Ferry, pilot for New Orleans mob boss Carlos Marcello, and Jack Ruby, it's not all that hard to guess what was being covered up. But that's not the case with Stephen Paddock. He's the only bad actor we have. Okay, so maybe you think Jesus Campos is a shady operator, but as far as I know, Jesus has never been accused of anything illegal, not like the men I mentioned close to the Kennedy assassination who were running guns to anti-Castro Cubans. There is nothing like that with the Las Vegas shooting, so we should prepare ourselves for the possibility that Stephen Paddock is the only bad actor we're ever going to get. Most serious criminals, not petty ones, but those involved in organized crime, are by definition not operating in isolation. If they're moving stolen goods, selling drugs, making book, or putting prostitutes out on the street, they are part of a network. The only exception I can think of is the serial killer, and by extension the mass shooter, individuals with no need for two sets of books. So that's the question I'll leave you with today. What kind of criminal is Stephen Paddock anyhow? Oh, one last item. In news articles on Paddock, we sometimes hear that he had a penchant for staring at people. If there was a reason why he'd do that, other than getting off being a creep, all I can think of is if Paddock believed he was under surveillance, he might look at people wondering if they were a threat to him or not. If I was under surveillance, I might do the same thing. I'm doing something a little different today, and this comes from a comment exchange I had with Starless Mystery, which I mentioned in my last video. Starless asked me if I had ever seen the 1976 movie 2 Minute Warning with Charlton Heston, a story about a sniper at the Super Bowl. She suggested I watch it to see if it might relate to the Las Vegas shooting. At the time I told her I wasn't sure if I'd ever seen it. I had definitely heard of the movie. It's possible I'd seen it in a theater back in 1976 or maybe later on TV. Now that I have watched it, since Starless clued me in, it was on YouTube for free, I can definitely state 2 Minute Warning is a thoroughly forgettable action thriller / disaster movie which might explain my foggy memory. I have another YouTube channel called Movie That's So Groovy with Alex, where I do movie reviews of personal favorites. I'm on an indefinite hiatus from doing new videos on that channel for a number of reasons, one being I'm too ambitious for my own good. I started wearing costumes which seemed like a good idea at the time, but it soon became clear anything that elaborate on a weekly basis was too much for one person. However, before I stopped doing the videos, I toyed with the idea for a feature called Read the Movie, See the Book, where I would take a movie I liked that had been adapted from a novel, read the thing, and then do a review talking about how the movie and the source material were the same or different. I even went as far as reading The Beguiled by Thomas Cullian, originally called The Painted Devil, and I planned on doing a review along with the movie made from it starring Clint Eastwood back in 1971. As far as the version made in 2017 with Colin Farrell and Nicole Kidman, I can't believe I paid $11 for this piece of crap. Everything that made the novel a fun gothic potboiler was nowhere to be found in here. So with that in mind, I told Starless Mystery I was not only going to watch 2 Minute Warning, but I was going to find a copy of the novel by George LaFontaine, read it first, then watch the movie. When I got that all done, I was going to do a book report. And what I can say about LaFontaine's novel is it contains, in numerous flashbacks, a harrowing portrait of a 17-year-old male from El Paso, Texas, named Norbert Baird, whose life is so utterly horrible and meaningless that you're not supposed to have any trouble imagining somebody like him turning into a sniper. In the course of his short life, Norbert sees a friend shoot himself while carelessly playing with a pistol. Friendless Norbert later has a homosexual encounter at summer camp and starts freaking out that all his schoolmates will now know what he did. Later, Norbert sees his drunken father kill a litter of puppies with a hatchet. The father dies from alcoholism, and not long after, Norbert attempts suicide by slashing his wrists. At this point, Norbert's relationship with his mother is in total shambles, so he decides to leave El Paso by hitchhiking, and the driver who gives Norbert a lift beats him up, sexually assaults him, robs him, and leaves him unconscious by the side of the road. Then, and I almost couldn't believe it as I was reading it, Norbert goes to Black Panther headquarters in, I guess, Los Angeles. Yeah, I do mean these guys. And he offers them his services. They more or less laugh him out of the room, and it's from then on that I had a tough time taking the book seriously. Up to this point, George LaFontaine did an okay job creating a lunatic hick character like Norbert, but the Black Panther scene comes off as caricatured comedy. We now know Norbert isn't just a deeply disturbed young man, he's also a total fucking idiot. I guess LaFontaine just couldn't resist slipping that in. Which isn't to say the Black Panther scene doesn't move the story along. In order to show those militants his worth, Norbert decides he's going to assassinate the President of the United States, who Norbert believes will put in an appearance at the Super Bowl. That's how we get Norbert with a rifle on the roof of the flag tower of the Los Angeles Memorial Coliseum. Phil Post, an assistant television director in the control room, is the first to see Norbert when a camera on the hovering blimp puts a shot of Norbert on the monitor. Post then gets word to the stadium security chief to get up to the control room, and from then on we get to watch the police and SWAT team's preparations for taking a shot at Norbert. Even though the book and movie share the same basic premise of a sniper looking down on 90,000 football fans, when it comes to comparing the two, with a couple of exceptions, it's as if all the characters in the novel got up and left and were replaced in the movie by a whole new set of characters. Even the sniper in the movie is a different person, called Cook, when he's finally identified. And that's all we ever find out about him. In the movie, he's basically a nobody with a rifle. So on balance, I would say the book is better than the movie, even though better is a relative term here. Both the book and the movie are nasty and dumb, but at least with the novel and its heavy reliance on flashbacks, we do get a lot of characterization as we flip back and forth to the real-time action. Unfortunately, the movie has to move in a linear way, so in a 2-hour flick, all we get for an hour and a half is setup until the slam-bang finale. The biggest difference between the movie and the book is that in the book, only 3 people are shot and killed, and the crowd in the Coliseum never knows there was any kind of shooting because of the noise. In the movie, however, when the sniper is wounded, he starts shooting wildly into the crowd, and that starts a panic where all the people in the stadium flee at once. Getting a panicked mob on the run was the whole point behind this movie existing. I have to say this about the movie. The whole sequence at the end with the crowd in a panic was unpleasant to watch. I've seen too many body-worn camera videos and cell phone videos of the Route 91 Harvest Festival to find something like the end of 2-minute warning entertaining. I would even go as far as to say, if you are a survivor of the LVS, don't watch this movie. Not that it matters, but 2-minute warning is a hack job piece of movie making, ripping off the sniper opening to Dirty Harry, then giving us little beyond busy work for a bunch of familiar character actors like David Jansen, Jack Klugman, and Walter Pidgeon. Let's just say I watched it so you don't have to. Finally, are there any things from the book or the movie 2-minute warning that would give us an insight into the Las Vegas shooting? Not in the slightest. But I did have this thought. The atrocities of the past, even fictional ones, never resemble the atrocities of the future. They are always different and always take us by surprise. They are never like anything we've seen before. Sadly, the story of fictional Norman Baird or the story of a real mass shooter like Charles Whitman, the Texas Tower sniper from 1966, tells us nothing about Stephen Paddock. The comparatively wealthier Paddock had to have some kind of reason for firing down at the crowd of country music fans at Route 91. It must have been meant to accomplish something, at least in his mind. But what? At the end of 2-minute warning, Heston's Captain Hawley has the sniper Cook on the ground after emptying his pistol into him. Hawley is screaming at Cook to give him some kind of reason why for doing what he did. But Cook just says, "Please don't hurt me," and dies. It's a cynical end to a cynical movie telling us you'll never get an answer to why. Fortunately, I don't believe that. Well, that's it for today. Please leave your thoughts in the comments section below. Like, subscribe, share, throw money at me. You know the drill. Have a good one. So I was trying to find a chain, and the closest I came were these weaved leaf rings linked together, and they went down to this fake parrot on a perch. And I said to myself, is this as close as I'm going to get? Oh good, his head didn't fly off this time. Yeah, the head actually comes off. You could stash stuff down inside the parrot. I'd show you, but it's too much of a pain getting it back on.